Working with this module reducer, and it's starting to get out of hand, right? It's it starts to looks like it's growing and growing, and it handles the create module, the delete module. I'm sure there's going to be tons of other actions that it needs to that takes into consideration. So this could grow into fairly complex reducer. So one of the things that we're going to do is that we're going to move it into its own dedicated directory, which is going to host all our reducers, all our finite state machines, right? So we're going to create a dedicated directory called reducers, right? In there, we'll create a module reducer. JavaScript, we'll call it module reducer. And in there, we're going to copy all of this. I'm going to copy that, and we're going to paste it in here. Notice that I don't need to import React because this has nothing to do with React, right? It's just a pure function. The only thing that it does is just calculates the next state based on the previous state and actions. Yes, right? So we'll need to export this reducer. Actually, no. Let's go over here. Default the module reducer. Once we export it, we can then import it over here. We say import module reducer from module reducer. So now I don't need this over here. So we moved it over to that reducer, or to the reducer file. Let's do a couple more cleanup. Here, instead of if statements, right? Since this is going to be fairly long, several nested if statements, it's more common to instead use a switch, right, on action type. And instead of having this individual equals, right, we use a case. We say case, right, colon, and then we're going to return that. And then this one will be another case, colon, right, and then we're going to return that. And finally, here you would have a default. Right, here we have a default. And you would close the switch over here. You return the state. Okay. Notice the default return state. That's very important, right? This means that if I don't understand what the action was, I'm just going to stay in the same state. Right? I'm not going to transition. I'll just stay here where I am. Right? If I don't know what you're telling me, I'll just stay where I am. Make sense? So this is very common. We have our state. Implemented as our finite state machine implemented as a switch. Let's see if we broke something. Right, so we can create, we can remove, so it still works, right? A couple other cleanups that we might want to do is that instead of using these strings like this are very easy to misspell, right? So a better solution might be to move all these strings into constants. So these are the different actions. We're going to store them in a file called module actions. So these are going to be all our actions, and we're going to have all our module actions in its own dedicated JavaScript. So this will be module actions. So in here we can declare const create module is equal to a string create module, and then we export that, right? And then we can declare a couple of these. We can declare also a delete module. Oops, copy, and paste that in here. Yes, and then here, instead of using this, we would use the constant instead. And we can import that from module actions, and we're going to import this one too as well. Yes, no? Did I export it? There we go. All right, so it's importing both from that class. So everywhere I would do that as well. I would do that also in my components, right? The course editor component. Actually, no, in the modules component, we have the state mapper. We also have these strings. Yes, here too, I don't want to use strings because they're easy to misspell, and the compiler would not catch it. Right? Module create module. So this is a better solution. The other common thing to do is that this action object right now is a static object like this, right? But we could have functions calculate all this, right? It could be a fairly complex action object. So a very common thing to do is to also wrap this inside of a function that calculates this on the fly, right? So for instance, for the delete module, you would create here in your constants, in your actions, you would create a function called, export const create module, which is a function that can return this object, right? Which can take our argument, maybe the module ID as an argument, right? So it has module ID. So instead of having this object here, what you would do instead is you would have a oops, what was it called? I'm sorry, this is delete module. Sorry. Right. So this would be delete module, right? That takes into argument module ID. Right. So this function returns this object, right, which is already built. Right. And the same thing with this create module. You would create here a export const create module, which would be a function that can return this object over here. Right. Again, we're just cleaning up, and it needs to take as argument the title. Right. So we can call this function, and the title would be an argument that we pass to this function, and this would be instead create module, and we pass in the title. Again, this is to manage complexity, right? As this gets more and more bigger of different things that we need to do, right? We just move things into dedicated files, yes, right? To manage the complexity as this gets bigger and bigger. Everybody okay? This was just a cleanup. We just cleaned up after ourselves, right? All right, let's keep going.